Hey, how's it going? And today this is just a quick and dirty review of the Canon XA11 high definition video camera. The reason I got this camera is that I wanted a complete package to get good audio and video at the same time out of the same package. So that's why I got this. I wanted something that was quick and easy and ready to go. So I want to just kind of go over some things about this camera that I like. Some of the little quirks. Overall, I think it's a fantastic camera. What I will tell you, I bought this used off Autorama for $1,000, so it was in excellent condition. Just one of the accessories was broken. So now I'm just going to walk through some of the things that I've discovered about the camera. I hope you will find this helpful. If you don't find this helpful and you hate this video, you can leave a dislike if you want, but I would prefer you just move along because I don't make any money off of these, and a lot of times these videos are just notes to myself. We're going to jump into this camera and I'm just going to go over what I think is important for you to know to start shooting video, because that's what it's for. As I go along the way, I'm going to give some quick tips and tricks that I think are also very important, so that I've learned over the years. Okay, so the very first thing that I'll say is one thing that's confusing about this camera is that it has 3 potential microphones, audio microphones. So you've got, on this other side of this handle, you've got XLR inputs. So if I turn the camera around, over here in the front, you have a 3.5 millimeter input for another microphone. So that's another potential microphone that can go into 3.5 millimeter microphones, little tiny mics you see. Some, I think Rode has some microphones that'll fit in there. So this is called the mic input. This input, that's for a 3.5 millimeter. On this side, of course, you've got the XLR cables. Now the microphone I have on here right now is a Sony ECM-MS2. I think it's a fantastic microphone. And the thing I like about it is that it actually records in stereo. It has a left and right channel built into the microphone. So it's 2 microphones really in one. So it allows you to get stereo using XLR inputs. So that's why I use that. And then the camera also has a built-in microphone. But unless it's the zombie apocalypse and the end of the world, I wouldn't recommend ever using the built-in microphone. Of course it works and it can get by at a pinch. Honestly, you're not going to get the quality or be able to take advantage of all these other features if you don't use a good quality microphone. So the other thing, and this is kind of a pet peeve of mine, is that if you're going to get a nice microphone, for the love of God, get a windscreen, a good windscreen. This here is the Rycote Softy, and this is a 24 by 25, so it's a little bit bigger, but it fits over this. And it has a nice low profile. It doesn't shed. You can go out and film in the wind and actually hear the wind, but not in a rumbling over the microphone way. In a nice, oh, that's the wind. So if you're going to go to the trouble of getting a nice microphone, then just get wind protection too. That's all you got to do. Now here on the external part of the camera, you've got a line input, a mic input, and phantom power, which is plus 48V. The way I got this set up is I've got the right channel of this XLR plug going into channel 1 and the left channel going into channel 2. So we put these on here and put the 48V. Then you have auto and manual. I don't recommend as a general rule going with any auto functions unless you're in a pinch and you don't have any other choice, but you want to be in control of what your camera's doing, so go with the manual settings. So we put this on manual, we put this on manual, and then here in the middle between these 2 switches is off and on, and basically turning the preamps on. So you put this on, then it activates everything. Now here you've got your gain control where you can increase, amplify your audio signal, but here's another tip or trick, that all these preamps have what's called a sweet spot, or what's called unity, and basically it's where probably the middle hatch mark is. So it's where you're not putting in too much preamp, you're not putting in none, kind of a compromise where you're just getting a nice little amplification to improve the audio signal. So I don't usually recommend changing these, even though you can. There's another way on the microphone trimming that you can do that, and I would just say wait to do that before you do that. So leave these on unity. There's other adjustments, other ways you can manage the audio signal. The bottom line is, with this configuration of a camera, and you're going to be doing like an interview and talking to somebody, basically because the microphone is mounted on the camera, you need to be close. So you're going to be doing a lot of close-up shots. So that's just the way it is, and that's perfectly fine. So yeah, I got to be 2 feet from your face, but that's fine because at least I'm getting good audio, and good audio is better than bad video. So I'll rather get a close-up shot. So in a certain sense, the audio is kind of dictating what video will be doing, but that's okay because our goal is good audio and video together. So we'll do a close-up even though maybe it's not justified, just because we want to get good audio. So rather than bump the gain up, I would move the whole camera closer to the sound of the source of the sound. So that's that. Plus wind protection. Never forget that. So that's that part of the camera. Now down here, there's a switch. It's pretty basic. I won't go over the basic functions because it's pretty self-explanatory, but camera is camera. So you click it on, it comes on. It's camera. And then media is if you want to play back and look at the media. So that's pretty self-explanatory. So we hit camera to turn it on. One thing that's weird about this camera, I will say, is that to charge the battery, there is no freestanding charger, and you got to plug it straight into the camera to charge the battery. So that's a little different. And then I will show you some other nifty feature here, is this actually pulls out and turns up, and then you can look through here. So if you're outside on a sunny day, you can shoot through here, you can view through here versus having the screen open. You can see the menu through here, and then over here, I gotta turn this camera around. There's a little toggle switch down here that allows you to navigate the menu. And then this, of course, is your zoom, and everything else is pretty self-explanatory. There's one other thing that I'll show you, is there's a little switch up here, which is really interesting. It has auto, manual, and camera. Basically, auto, if you put this on auto, you can just hit record and the camera will adjust all the settings for you automatically. That would be for like if you were completely drunk or potentially psychotic. So just put it in auto, press record, and you're good to go. M is manual, where you have control over the manual settings, and that's what I would say you'd be in most of the time. If you put it on M, you also have the option to take pictures with the video camera. If you put it on cinema, you can't take photos anymore, but then it gives you a choice of it bakes in some photo styles into your footage, supposedly a cinematic look and a memory look and some other things, which is a little different. So if you're wanting to bake in that to your footage, then you could put it on cinema, but I would just say 99% of the time just leaving it on manual. So there's that switch. From here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump into the menu now that you kind of know these functions on the external side. Most of what happens to control the camera happens on the menu using the screen here, this screen here. So I'm going to jump into that and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back, and now I'm going to walk you through this screen, which is basically where you'll set up all your settings. You can also adjust these settings through the external viewfinder, but then you'll have a toggle switch to jump around. So what's great about this is, of course, this display has all your information. I already have this camera set up, and I'm going to go ahead and walk you through. There's some quirky little things. So as you can see where it says photo here, that means I have that switch on manual, not on cinema. If I click that switch to cinema, just have to click right there. The camera resets. It powers off, it powers back on. This comes up every time. See, now it has filters, and if I click on that, you see I have a choice of all these baked in looks. I'm not a big fan of doing that, baking in looks, but I guess if you were in a pinch and want to do something quick and dirty, that's something that you could do. Those filters, those baked in settings, don't affect any of your other settings on the camera. It's just a way to bake in some looks if you want. I'm going to move that switch back to manual, see how it resets. So anyway, if we go into function, this is the button, your entry point. Let's see, that means something when it does that. Am I still on? Oh, I went into auto. So instead of putting that switch that had auto, manual, and cinema, I actually put it on auto. So one way you know that you'll do that is when you go into function, you'll just have these two choices. So that tells you right away you're in the wrong mode. So I'm going to put it back to manual, that switch. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so now we're on the screen, and it gives us all our settings. It kind of confirms all our settings, so it's good to keep an eye on this. I don't plan on going over settings that are self-explanatory. I just want to kind of go over the basics. So you've just got the camera, it's turned on, you've got SD card in, you got your battery charged, you're good to go. Now we're just going to set the camera up for filming, which is mostly just our exposure, aperture, white balance, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what we're going to go over. And we'll take a look at the audio settings too. So let's start with the audio settings. So if we go into function and then we go into menu, we have 3 tabs here, and the first one that has the video camera icon has almost all of our audio settings. So right now I have that Sony ECM MS2 mic plugged in. That's an XLR microphone. So if you come in, you'll notice all the built-in microphone options are dimmed out. And also, because I don't have a 3.5mm mic plugged in, those options are out. So what I do have an option is channel 1, the input, the XLR input into channel 1 always is channel 1. So the only choice that you really can manipulate is channel 2. So channel 2 does give you a choice of input, and of course the input for channel 2 is going to be input 2. I can put channel 1 into channel 2. I can put the built-in mic into channel 2, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put the left channel from my microphone into channel 2. Now, I mentioned earlier about your controlling your audio levels. So here you can do mic trimming. There's an attenuator. I don't usually use that. There's a limiter. I don't usually use that. If I wanted to control my recording, so let me just show you something real fast. Let me close this screen. And right now you see as I'm talking, I'm getting kind of low audio levels. I'm actually behind the microphone. The microphone's pointed away from me. It's on. I'm filming with it. I'm filming this screen with a Sony A7S. With the microphone, with the 3.5mm microphone on that camera pointing back at me. And so you're seeing the audio signal you're seeing is on the XA11 microphone pointing forward. It's about maybe 2 feet away from me, pointing in the opposite direction. But so you can see what a relatively good signal I'm getting with the microphone pointed away from me. So if we go back into function, we go into menu, I can adjust that by trimming the microphone. So I'll show you what I mean. So right now I think I have it at minus 12 dB. See that? So if I go in here and change it to negative 6 dB and change this one to negative 6, you'll watch. You'll see the signal improve. So I close that. Look at the improved signal now. So now that, even though the microphone's not even pointed at me, I'm getting a really good signal off that microphone. So that's fantastic. So that's how I would adjust input level. Generally speaking, this should be around negative 12 dB, which is about where it is. So that's pretty much all you need to know for the audio. But those audio settings are here. And like I said, I wouldn't advise changing the gain. Okay, so then we're done with the audio. Okay, so now the question becomes, well, what are we recording exactly? What codec are we using? What are our frames per second? What's our shutter speed? The shutter speed will be determined by your frames per second. So for movie format, we have AVC HD. AVC actually stands for Advanced Video Codec. So it's actually a very high quality, sophisticated codec. So I would use that as the highest quality over MP4. That decision is already easy to make. Let's go into recording mode. This is kind of showing our speed's going to be, our stream speed is going to be. So if you're going to shoot at 28 Mbps, LPCMS stands for linear pulse code modulation. So that's a perfectly great way to record your audio. So LPCM is the way I would usually choose it. But if you choose 28 Mbps, the frame rate's automatically going to be set for you at basically 60 frames per second. So the only time that I would use this setting, it resets when you use it, by the way. The only time I would use that setting is if I was wanting to record something in slow motion. But then I will show you the closest you could get to the shutter speed on this would be 1/100, 1/100th. So that's the closest shutter speed you're going to get on that. Generally what I do is I would choose 24 Mbps. LPCM. So that's going to give me good quality audio at a very good bit rate. So that's generally what I would record in, unless I was going to record slow motion, and then I would record that one. So the recording medium is just which card you want. Now if we come down here to frame rate, because I chose 24 Mbps, I have a choice of frame rate. And your frame rate, you have 24 frames per second, 30 frames per second, and 60 frames per second. I would just go with 30 frames per second. So you could do slow motion at 24 and do your 60, or you could do 24, which is more of a cinematic frame rate. That's up to you. Then your shutter speed, which we'll be getting to shortly, would be double whatever your frame per second is. So we'll close out of that. So now we have our codec set, and all that can be verified over here. So you can see, I don't know if you can see that, but it says AVC HD and our 30 frames per second, and we can see our bit rate there. And then we're going to jump into these other settings here. Now one little quirky thing about the camera is, now let's say we want to adjust, of course, our aperture and our shutter speed, and it has dB, which is essentially your ISO, but it's video amplification signal. We usually want to leave that at 0, and if we don't have a proper exposure, we'd want to bring in more lighting rather than bump up the ISO. You'd only bump up the ISO if you had no other option. It's really, so what's interesting about this is that when you go into recording programs, this part is not intuitive, right? So let me go back. So we want to adjust our aperture and everything. So we go into, or in our shutter speed, so we're going to go into function, we're going to go into record program, and it says manual exposure. You wouldn't necessarily think your shutter speed and all that's going to be in there, but that's exactly where it is. So you hit M, and here's your shutter speed. Your shutter speed's there, and your aperture's there. And then you have this slide scale down here. So this goes all the way down to 2.0. I think 2.0. Yeah, no, wait, one more. Oh, 2.2. So it has a 2.2 aperture, and then because our frames per second, we can set our shutter speed at 1/60th. Remember when I said if you set the Mbps to 28, then you'd want to double, that's 60 frames per second. Here you can only go, if I go here, the closest you can get is 1/100. It should be 1/120, but you only have an option of 1/100 versus 1/250. So I would say go to 1/100. So if you're going to do the 28 Mbps, you'd set your shutter speed at 1/100. But because I have the frames per second at 30, I'm going to set it at 60. So then we go back and we close out of that. So now we can see we've got our aperture set, we've got our frame rate set, our shutter speed set, we got our frame rate over there. Everything's looking great. So then the only thing really left is white balance and focus. So if we click this button, we'll go back into function. There's our white balance right there. And of course here, there's the usual suspects, the presets, which generally if you're, the presets work perfectly fine. And then you also have the option to do a custom white balance. Just pop a gray card in front of your lens and then hit set white balance and you're done there. But here I'm right now, let's say I'm filming indoors, I can just do incandescent like that. So there's that. So then you set your white balance, and then the last thing left is focus. And there's one other button I should have mentioned on this camera. It's in the back. I can kind of scooch this out here to show you a little bit. It's pretty dark in here right now. Let me look. I have no choice. I'm gonna bump up the ISO. See, look what happens when I bump up the ISO in this camera. But right here, you have an option for zoom or focus. So if you put that on focus, then that allows you to use this ring right up here in the front of the camera. I don't know if you can see that, this ring right here, to adjust your focus, manually adjust your focus. So I might have to refocus my camera because I moved everything. Now some people don't like focus peaking, but I actually find it helpful. So let's say we've got our aperture set, we've got our shutter set, we've got our frame rate set, we're in AVC HD, we've got our audio signal checked and good. So we're pretty much ready to start recording video. all we would want to know is, well, we need to get our subject in focus. So if you're set in manual focus, there's a button right here, and if you click it, you can go into manual focus. You click that switch on the camera that I showed you earlier, and then you can just turn your ring. Now watch what happens if we go into focus. There is a tab just for focus, and you have the option to turn on the peaking here, turn it on or turn it off. And then deeper within the menu you can set what color the peaking is. But here you would just touch wherever on the screen you want it to be in focus, and it will focus. I have the lens cover on, so I have the lens cover on the camera so you can't really see anything, but you would just touch wherever you want on the screen to set it. And then if we hit close out of that screen, then we can also just turn our ring over here on the front of the camera to adjust our focus. And basically after that you hit stop, you hit start and stop record button, and you're good to go. So overall, sorry, let me zoom out here with my camera. I have to wrench this thing for some reason. Like I said, I'm not filming in an ideal location. I'm on the road right now, but I just wanted to do a quick video on this camera just because I think it's a great little camera. I think it has a lot of potential. Fits in a small little bag, and it would allow you to get good audio and video in one package. And just, you know, just like with any camera, you gotta get out and fumble around with it a few times. So I want to say it seems like it is a camera that you could just pull out of the box and start shooting with, but honestly you probably need to give yourself 2 to 4 hours of just playing around with it and going out and shooting some test footage just to get comfortable with everything. And then once you get adept with getting your focus and your settings and changing your settings as the settings change, it should be a very fantastic camera. So for $1,000, I really don't think you can go wrong. And rather than buy the camera new, I would go on Adorama or B&H Photo and see if you can find one used for, I think these are still selling for like $1,300, $1,400. But then you got the additional cost of getting a good microphone and the wind cover for it too. But those are expenses that are really worth it. So overall, I would say 4.5 stars, 4 stars for this camera, 4 out of 5. It's a good little camera, and I'm really looking forward to using it. And I hope you found this video of some help. Take care and have a great day.